Hi, this is Trace Perot. This is my station, Raw Vegan Cowboy. Welcome. This is the third in my series on cosmic programming. I'm going to give a brief recap. Cosmic programming is what I call astrology. And this particular series was engendered by the fact that I find very little useful out there in terms of astrological knowledge that does any good. So I would strongly recommend that you start with number one, the first one. I'm going to give a recap right now, but you want to hear the whole video. Basically I'm presenting a system of understanding yourself and all those around you according to our cosmic programming, I call it, or our astrology, traditionally known as astrology, our astrological makeup. So let's recap. The first episode, we described how we're going to take a series of templates and lay them one on top of the other. And the base template was all about the first video, what the first video was all about. And that template basically takes the entire human race, all the psychological, physical, mental, emotional, possible makeup and combinations of the entire human race, and puts them right here within this circle. The long and the short of it is that every single individual on the planet, according to when they were born, and not necessarily the year or whatever, just the date that they were born, their sun sign, it's called, right? According to that, which is, of course, is where you determine their sun sign, right, in astrology, and there are 12 sun signs. So everybody on the planet was born in a certain period of time in the course of a year, and when they were born determines their sun sign. And the first what would you call it? The first aspect of that is whether or not they're one of these 6 signs or these 6 signs, because the 12 signs are divided down the middle, okay? And 6 of them are at their basic level negative feminine signs, okay? I'm going to explain what that means in a minute, but the other 6 are positive masculine. So in the first episode, I made a differentiation between those what are called polarities. Everybody has a polarity according to their sun sign. You're either negative feminine, positive masculine. So what this means basically is that you sort of, even though you may be a female who has a positive masculine sign, you're still a female, basically, but you embody certain masculine characteristics, okay? Same goes as if you're a male and you're a negative feminine sign, you embody certain female characteristics. Some overt examples of that would be like long hair, okay? And short hair on women on the masculine side. So you'll find that most women with short hair, at least prior to like their 60s or whatever, will be a positive masculine sign because they're embodying the masculinity according to our culture, according to tradition, right? Same goes on the negative feminine side. Many men who are on the negative feminine side, if you run into a man with long hair, chances are they're negative. They're going to be one of these 6 signs, negative feminine. All right, that's just a very overt example. It's also probably the best example I have in real life is the difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Okay, such a glaring difference, right? Well, Donald Trump is a Gemini. He's a positive masculine sign, very out front, very outgoing, very outspoken. Very much the male, the womanizer, the whole thing, the whole ball of wax, right? The man in control, blah, 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 right? He's way out in front in everybody's face all the time. Those are very masculine traits, okay? Joe Biden, on the other hand, is, not to be negative, I don't have any opinion of either one of them. I mean, politics is a major farce anyways. It's just smoke and mirrors. But Biden is sort of withdrawn, kind of squeamish. Not that that's a negative, that's kind of a negative trait. So let me back up. So Biden is more, let's say, receptive. When he gets on the podium and speaks, he's not assertive. He doesn't throw himself out there. He doesn't, command the stage like a positive masculine sign. And, that's because he's a Scorpio, okay? That's a negative feminine sign. It's also a water sign. So just looking at those two individuals, you can see the difference. And every individual on the planet is going to have that bearing either as a positive masculine or negative feminine. So that was what the first episode was all about. It was all about polarity, which is the basis, the most basic level of your astrological makeup according to your sun sign. So let's take a look at the second, if I can find it, the second episode, which was about the types of signs. Okay, see if I can find it. Oh, here we go. So then we took the circle, and we divided it into three. Okay, so, and we found out that there are three types of signs. So this is the next level. Okay, there are cardinal signs. They tend to be the initiators, the leaders, okay? Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. One from each element, which we'll get into eventually. And then there's the fixed signs, which are the people that basically, to be really basic about it, they fixate on things, they nurture things, and they bring them from beginning to end. And I'll give you an analogy in a minute, or a metaphor for that. Then the mutable signs deal primarily with information. So Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces are mutable signs. Fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Now, the analogy that I used in that second episode was the analogy of a widget factory. Okay, so somebody comes along, one of the initiators, one of the leaders, the cardinal signs, and says, if we start making midgets right now, by next year, we're going to be making a lot of money because widgets are going to be very popular. People are going to want them, okay? So that's what the cardinal sign is going to do. They're going to initiate the project, right? Then they're going to say, well, we need some people to make these widgets, We're going to make arrangements and get the factory going and get people in place and everything, but we need people to make the widgets from start to finish. That's your fixed signs, okay? Your fixed signs are going to nurture that project, making that widget from the raw resources all the way to the finished product. Now, the third type of sign is a mutable sign. And what does the mutable sign do? The mutable sign takes all the information about these widgets, and the mutable sign conveys it to the public so that they can make sales, so they can improve the lives of the public. So they're going to take all the information that they can garner from these widgets, how they were made, what they do, how effective they are, how durable, how long-lasting they're going to be, how inexpensive they are for what they do for you. All that stuff is going to come from the mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. Okay? So that's what we got into in the second episode. So you should go back and check that out. Now we're going to move on to the third phase of this. And I called that second episode Sun Signs, which I should have called it Sun Signs Part 1, because now we're going to do Sun Signs Part 2. Okay? And I'm going to just reach down and get my pencil. Okay. So at this point, if we're really going to get something out of this, and it's going to be tremendous, believe me, I'm doing this because I found that you can learn tremendously improve the quality of your relationships with all the people you encounter from day to day by knowing these things. So, you know, if you know things about your boss, if you know things about your kids, if you know things about your partner, your business associate, your best friend, okay? I mean, this is just essential information. And once again, I will repeat that this is basically a psychology course. And like I always say, if your psychologist or a psychiatrist does not have an awareness, knowledge, thorough knowledge of astrology, then you're only getting half the picture, because astrology is a matter of psychology. And any kind of counseling or psychiatric work done with a person is going to take 2, 3, 4 times as long to get for anything to get accomplished, as opposed to if that particular psychiatrist or psychologist or counselor knew something about astrology. Because basically astrology, a la what I'm presenting, gives you a blueprint for a person. Okay, it's an inextricable blueprint. I would venture to say that your astrology determines just about everything that you do, think, and say in your life. It is determined by your astrological makeup. So on that note, we'll start right in. Okay, so at this point we need to learn the signs. So you need to be fluent in signs. You need to know the 12 signs, the names of them, their symbols that represent them, okay? And then ideally, their general characteristics. And then we're going to apply them to these templates, okay? We already know, we've already encountered the negative and the negative feminine, positive masculine, right? We had a list, 6 on each side. Then we had cardinal, fixed and mutable. We had 4 in each, right? But we probably don't remember who goes where at this point. And in order to do that, in order to get something out of these templates and be able to vastly improve your relationships with all the people you encounter in your life, you need to know the sun signs, okay? You need to be able to recognize them. So I thought about this a lot, and I was thinking, you know, what is the easiest way? I mean, I've been doing this for, I've been looking into astrology for 30 years, and my bio is in the first episode, so check that out. But I've been looking at astrology for 30 years. So I just know the sun signs, just from going over and over many, many times with different aspects. But I've been thinking, you know, how do I present this so that people will remember the sun signs? And I came up with this idea, okay, just like my episodes here, my system that I'm creating, that's highly unusual, that I've never encountered any other astrologer come up with. And that is to identify the symbols that astrology has, that the zodiac has for sun signs, in 3 categories, okay? So I'm going to start with, there's 3 categories, right? The first category is water creatures, okay? So there are 3 zodiac signs that are associated with water, okay? And I'm going to tell you what those are in a minute. The next category is people. There are, there are 4 signs in the zodiac that are represented by symbols of human beings, okay? So we have water creatures, we have symbols of we have human beings, right? And we have 5 sun signs in the zodiac that are represented by animals, okay? So if we start thinking in these terms, we got the water creatures, we got the people, we got the animals. We can start to get an idea, we can break them down, and I believe would be much easier to remember these signs. Okay, so in the animal category, I'm not going to write because it's way down there, but in the animal category, we'll start from the beginning of the zodiac. Remember, the zodiac is a progression. It goes all the way around the circle according to which sign you are. You fall in certain segments as you go around the circle. The circle itself represents the seasons, the 4 seasons, starting in spring, right, and going through till winter and fall, spring, summer, fall, and winter. It also represents the life of a man, okay, so the progression of a man, maturity from birth to death, okay, is represented by the circle. So at some point you start on the circle and you're an infant, right? Okay, and then you end at the 12th sign and you are associated with eternal life, quote unquote, death, right? Okay, so getting back to the animals, we're going to start at the beginning. We're going to start at the beginning of spring, all right? Also the beginning of a man's life. We're going to start with Aries, okay? And I'm going to give you a short little title for each one of these signs so you can start to remember them. Aries is known as the infant of the zodiac, okay? But Aries' symbol is that of a ram, okay? So that is the first animal of the 5 animals of the zodiac, is a ram, okay? Aries is very much like a ram. It puts its head down and it butts right into things, okay? It's also the infant of the zodiac, the first sign of the zodiac. It begins the zodiac, okay? So the man is born in Aries. The next sign is Taurus, which happens to be an animal sign as well. Taurus is the bull, okay? Taurus is the 2-year-old of the zodiac, okay? So very much hung up, caught up, aware, ensconced in the material of life, okay? So on the negative side, very possessive, all about possessions. But on the positive side, very down to earth and very material oriented and very practical-minded and just aware and good at dealing with their hands and dealing with the actual material of life, all right? So let's get into the metaphor or the sign, what we say about Taurus. Taurus is the banker and the farmer of the zodiac, okay? So let's just take a look at that real quick. A banker. What does a banker do? A banker takes people's money and saves it and builds capital and invests it, right? So it's very much about acquisition, possession, okay? Long-term, okay? Steady as she goes. No bank or finance person has ever, lasted very long unless they take a very steady course, right? They're not going to deviate from the course. Taurus is known for being stubborn, okay? So that's what a banker does. A farmer essentially does the same thing. A farmer has his field and his vegetables, his crops that he nurtures along, right, all year long, and then stockpiles and then sells, all right? So you can kind of get a picture of what a Taurus is all about, right? A Taurus is a fixed sign, but I won't get into that just yet. So Taurus, the farmer and the banker of the zodiac, right? It's one of the 2 money signs of the zodiac, and I'll eventually explain that. If we want to, first of all, let's take an example of Aries. Aries is known as the general of the zodiac as well as the infant of the zodiac. The most famous general in modern warfare history was General George Patton, and he was an Aries, okay? So, the general and the infant, Taurus, the farmer and the banker, okay? What was I going to say about that? Oh, okay, so if we look at Wall Street, locations have astrological charts. It's called astrocartography, and you can analyze the location according to when it was brought to life, okay? So if we look at the chart of Wall Street, just, you know, the stock market on Wall Street in New York City, that chart is a sun sign Taurus, okay? So what is Wall Street all about? It's all about money. It's all about banking. It's all about finance. It's all about investing. It's all about long-term gains. Okay, so that's what, you know, that's Taurus, all right? It just so happens when we get to Cancer, I'll explain this, but the New York City itself in astrocartography is a Cancer. And Cancer and Taurus are very compatible, right? So in the city of Cancer, you have the stock market of Wall Street, okay, of Taurus, okay? Now, the third sign, Gemini, is more or less a person when they get to puberty. We're starting to move out of summer. Taurus, you know, all about flowers. Aries about, you know, the push, the drive into spring, the energy, the thawing out, right? The seed germinating, initiating. Taurus is all about, boom, it's spring. You know, I'm going to lounge here in the pasture and the flowers are coming up and the cows are giving me the eye. And, you know, that's Taurus, pleasure, beauty, spring in its full blossom. Gemini is on the cusp or between spring and summer, okay? So Gemini, which starts in late May, like May 21st or 22nd or something like that, is just about getting into June when, you know, school's out for the summer. You know, it's time to party, right? Time to go to the beach. Time to go, you know, sand dune buggy riding or whatever you do during the summer, right? So Gemini, Gemini is represented by the twins. Okay, so which brings me to mind. Let's backtrack a little bit. Let's stick with the animals. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to look at who am I going to look at? Cancer, Leo. Okay, we have Aries as an animal, Taurus as an animal, and Leo the lion. Okay, Leo is an animal. All right, Leo is known as the father of the zodiac. So we'll move on just to nail down the animals. So that's 3. What do we have left? We have Sagittarius. Okay, Sagittarius is the centaur, right? Or the, I forget what you call it, but the half man, half horse, right? So it's an animal essentially with a little bit of human aspect in there, but it's essentially one of the animal signs, right? So it's a, I believe it's a centaur you call that, an animal with a horse with with a human body, where the head usually is. Okay, so that's Sagittarius. Capricorn is a goat. All right, so here are the 5 animal signs of the zodiac. They are Aries, the ram, Taurus, the bull, Leo, the lion, Sagittarius, the centaur. Okay, I'm not sure if that's what they're actually called, but it's the horse, basically a horseman, half horse, half man, and Capricorn, the goat. Okay, that should be easy to remember. Okay, now let's look at, we'll get back to our progression here. But let's look at the people signs, because there are 4 people signs, all right? So let's go back up here. We had Aries, Taurus. The 3rd sign of the zodiac is Gemini. And Gemini is represented by the twins, okay, which is a human symbol. It's an image of 2 twins, okay? So we come down here and we get to Virgo. Virgo is the 2nd human representative of the zodiac, a symbol that represents a human. Virgo is the virgin. Both start with V, easy to remember. Virgo the virgin, okay? So that's Virgo's symbol. Then we go to Libra. Now Libra is the scales. Okay, now you've all seen the picture of whoever it is, Aphrodite or somebody, the Greek god, holding the scales, right? So that is the image, the symbol of Libra. Okay, Libra is the judge of the zodiac. Okay, Virgo is the virgin. Okay, then we go to Aquarius. Aquarius is the fourth human image symbol of the zodiac. Aquarius is the water bearer. Okay, so Aquarius is often represented by a human being carrying jugs of water on their shoulder on the long stick, right? So those are the four symbols that are represented by figures, by human figures. They are, once again, Gemini, the twins, Virgo, the virgin, Libra, the scales, or the Greek god, the judging god, and Aquarius, the water bearer, the one who actually, the metaphor with Aquarius is, they're the ones that bring the water into the village. When the village is looking for water, their wells have run out, the Aquarian goes out and brings the water in. And I'll get into a further explanation because that has to do with commerce. Okay, so we have the four human images, and now we'll get into the three. Whoa, we'll get into the three. This is not very stable. Water creatures. Okay, these are symbols that are associated with water. Okay, so let's look at who they are. The first one is Cancer. Okay, Cancer, the symbol for Cancer is a crab. Okay, so walks sideways, breeds up on the sand, lives in the water. This is Cancer. Okay, the second water creature is Scorpio. Scorpio is the scorpion. If you've ever been in the desert, around a pool, or an oasis of some sort, or a spring, you'll always find scorpions. Most likely you're going to find a scorpion near that water or in that water, which I've done several times in the desert. Okay, so Scorpio, one of the water creatures. And Pisces. Pisces is the third of the water creatures. Pisces is the fish. Right? If you want to look at it, Pisces would be the most submerged, and that's very appropriate because Pisces is all about the unconscious. Pisces is all about the deep psychological processes, about intuition and all that kind of stuff, right? So those are the three water creatures, right? So we have Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So there is a symmetry, although it doesn't look like it here. The symmetry is 3 water creatures, 4 people, and 5 animals, right? So 3 plus 4 is 7, 7 plus 5 is 12, so it's going 3, 4, 5. That's how you can start to remember the sun signs. Okay, so and before we go on to episode 2 or episode 4, and I'm really going to try to be diligent about this. I've been off for too long. We want to learn these sun signs, okay? You're not going to remember a lot of this that I'm talking about, individual signs, but I am going to go through the rest of these signs. So we learned that Gemini is the twins, right? Gemini was known as the messenger god, messenger between gods. So Gemini flew in the heavens from one god to another, taking a message, okay, to the other god, between the gods, right? Cancer. Cancer is known as the mother of the zodiac, very emotional, right? It's also a cardinal sign. Gemini is a mutable sign, dealing with information, you know, with transferring those messages between gods so the gods don't get confused and get on each other's case. Cancer is the mother, so it's very nurturing. She's all about family. invariably a Cancer, the single most important thing in their life is their family. You'll find that time and time again. Leo the lion. Okay, Leo is, and Cancer is the beginning of teenage years. Leo is later teenage years. Leo is known as the father of the zodiac. Okay, so you have them right next to each other. You have the mother, Cancer, Leo, the father. Okay, and remember, we're progressing through a human being's life, right? So at some point, you know, you're going to recognize the feminine and the masculine, right? But anyways, Leo is later years, later teenage years. Then we go into Virgo, the virgin. All I can say about Virgo, really, there isn't a specific, you know, like I can't say, like I did with Taurus, the Taurus is the banker and the farmer, the zodiac. Virgo is all about service. So you might say that Virgo could possibly be the servant of the zodiac, because Virgos are extremely service oriented. If you know a Virgo, if you got a Virgo in your life, they're very oriented towards doing a service for other people, right? So that's Virgo, the servant. Libra. And Virgo is a mutable sign, right? So Libra is a cardinal sign, an initiator. Remember the 3 categories we had? So Libra is an initiator, and Libra is the judge. So Libra is holding the scales, okay, and making the judgment, okay? So there's much more depth in all of these signs, but that's the way we remember Libra, right? Scorpio. Scorpio is the scorpion. Scorpio essentially is the researcher of the zodiac. Scorpio has a very keen, insightful mind, okay? So they look into things, right? They look deep into things. Now, the best example I can give of that is, and I might go back and give examples of real people in real life. The best example I can give of Scorpio is Picasso, the artist, probably the most famous artist in the world besides possibly Rembrandt or Leonardo da Vinci, but certainly Picasso is the most famous artist in the modern era. Now, if you know anything about Picasso, if you studied, if you looked at him, looked at his work, you'll understand, especially if you know his history, that he dropped out of art school at a very young age because he had mastered all that traditional art form that was prevalent at that time, that hadn't been broken away from. So that very extremely representative, realistic artwork, okay, to some degree very religious in most cases, but very realistic. Picasso mastered that at a very young age. His father was an art teacher, and he started from the get-go, and he just mastered that at a very early age, and therefore had nowhere else to go. And because he was a Scorpio, he started, he looked deep into things. So from the point at which he left art school, you'll notice that his artwork starts to expand. He starts to break things apart, essentially destroy them and put them back together with different angles, right? So if we skip over to when he started doing portraits of women, you'll really see that effect, because he breaks them down into their constituents, right? Puts them back together at different angles so that we get a whole different view of a woman. We look right into her soul, okay? So that, and Cubism was all about breaking things down, looking inside, seeing what's in there, analyzing it, and representing it, what it's really all about, So that's the best example I can give of the researcher of the zodiac, Picasso, right? If we go to Sagittarius, okay, Sagittarius is the visionary of the zodiac. So So the symbol of Sagittarius is a half man, half horse. And the man part of the horse, which is where the horse's head usually is, from the waist up, is a man, right? And the man is holding a bow and arrow, all right? So he's shooting for the stars. And that's what Sagittarius is basically all about. Sagittarius is a visionary, okay? They envision perfection, the way things should be, the way things can be, and they strive to achieve that, okay? Now, the best example I have that is an old friend of mine, an old girlfriend who was a Sagittarius, and she had a shop, a gift shop, and she made the most incredible things I've ever seen in my life. Absolute perfection, unbelievable stuff that she made in that gift shop, you know, with her own two hands and her own resources. And every piece that she did was a consummate piece of art, just absolutely perfect, right? So this was a Sagittarius thing, right? Shooting for the stars. I can't really think of anybody else except John F. Kennedy was a Sagittarius, and of course in his speeches he enunciated or, you know, brought forth a lot of really idealistic, visionary things, like, you know, ask not what you can do for your country, but or ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. That's a very visionary phrase to lay on people in a speech, right? So Sagittarius, right? I can't think of anybody else off the hand that's blatantly a Sagittarius. Sagittariuses are also known as the teacher of the zodiac. And the first thing that comes to mind, since I am a yoga, basically practically a master yogi, been practicing for 33 years. I have an online class I do every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on Instagram, Raw Vegan Cowboy, if you want to do some yoga. But I picked up the first couple of years that I was doing yoga on BKS Iyengar, who is probably the most prominent yoga teacher ever in the history of yoga, or at least in modern times. He's the one that brought yoga to the West. By, you know, in the 30s and 40s, he would take trips to England and give yoga demonstrations in public places, right? So he's considered probably the greatest teacher of yoga ever. He is a Sagittarius, okay? He mastered 202 yoga poses and composed an encyclopedia of yoga poses that is so extensive it's mind-boggling, and it's basically my yoga Bible. He created that, and it's really the closest thing to perfection you could get in terms of yoga, and it's absolutely the most insightful instruction manual on yoga that is in existence, right? So these are Sagittarius traits, right? So now we go to Capricorn. Capricorn, one of the 5 animal signs, is a goat, okay? So what is Capricorn? Capricorn is more or less somebody like Virgo. There's not a name that I can give him, a metaphorical name like a banker or a visionary or the judge. You know, I can't really give that to Capricorn. Capricorn is the goat, and Capricorn is known for basically climbing the mountain one step at a time. Okay, so if you ever known a Capricorn, they have a realization that life is not all that easy, right? And if you're going to get somewhere, if you're going to get through life and have a valuable life and contribute, it's not going to be that easy. And so they recognize that, they take the shots, they put one foot in front of the other, and they never give up, and they go forward, they go up that mountain, and they find out what there is on that mountain to bring back down to humanity. Okay, so that's what a Capricorn's all about. the goat, the mountain climber. All right. It's an earth sign. It's a cardinal sign. They're known for leading with organization and leadership. So they're very meticulous about all of that. And then we go to Aquarius. Aquarius, the water bearer. Okay. So what can I say about Aquarius? Well, Aquarius is the man about town. All right. Aquarius is very community oriented. All right. Very much a part of the community, very much interested in nurturing community, bringing people together, that sort of thing. All right. So that's really what Aquarius is all about. All right. So moving on to the last sign of the zodiac. All right. It's Pisces. Now, Pisces is known as the priest of the zodiac. The best example I can give of a Pisces to illustrate that is Johnny Cash. Okay. Johnny Cash, what was he known as? He was known as the Man in Black, which is just so apropos, right? Because what do priests wear? They wear black. Johnny Cash always wore black. He was known as the Man in Black. Johnny Cash was a Pisces. Okay, Pisces is a mutable sign. Okay, so we will call Pisces the priest of the zodiac. All right. Pisces is associated, as we will find out eventually when we go into greater depth in these signs. Pisces is associated with death, insane asylums, the unconscious, dreams. Okay, these are the things that are associated with Pisces. And since we've reached the end of the zodiac, right? So we're at the end of this man's life, right? Things are getting very spiritual, right? He's thinking about what's going to happen when he passes on, right? So, the priest comes into the picture, okay? What happened? What do you see at a funeral? You see a priest. Who do you go to before you die to confess? You go to a priest, okay? So this is what Pisces is all about. Now let's see. Okay, so this is this is an introduction to the sun signs. Hopefully, this will allow you to remember the sun signs. Because you need to, at this point, start remembering who the sun signs are, right? What they are, what their symbol is, because now we're going to get into the different categories they fall into. We've already looked at one category, and that's the type of sun signs, and that is cardinal, fixed, and mutable, and how important that is in human beings accomplishing tasks, okay? Also, it's very much important in terms of roles, right? So if you're one of those signs, if you're an initiator, a cardinal sign, chances are you're going to be a leader at whatever you do, right? So it's going to be your role in life to be an initiator. What could be more important than that, than knowing what your God-given, innate, congenital role is in life, even before you get started, right? It's going to be, in the case of the cardinal sign, the initiator. So if you're one of those 4 cardinal signs, right? So that's just an example, the same thing with the fixed signs. You're going to be nurturing things along. The mutable signs, you're going to be very adept with information, and you're going to be using information a lot. Okay, so that's why you need to know these signs, because, if your boss is a mutable sign, all right, it's going to have a whole different approach to doing things than an initiator, than a leadership sign like an Aries or a Cancer, right? And everybody has a different style in these particular types. They have a different style of dealing with information. They have a different style of nurturing things. They have a different style of leading people, right? Let's take a look at that. Aries leads with action, just like a general. Rallies the troops, take over, very physical, take over the territory, win the war, right? Cancer leads with emotion. Cancer is a water sign. Motion is water. So Cancer leads with emotion. All right, so the Cancer will say, like example I used before, suppose she's trying to get her husband to be a better uncle to his nephew. She's not going to say, well, let's go out and get him and, take him to the movies and what. No, he's going to, the Cancer's going to say, well, wouldn't you feel great? Wouldn't it be so fulfilling? Wouldn't it be such a pleasant experience for you to take your nephew out to the movies, buy him some popcorn? It's going to use emotion, right? So the next sign is Libra. Libra is an air sign, and we'll get into that. We'll get into the elements next, actually, after we finish with the sun signs. Libra uses words and a plan. Very intellectual, very conceptual. So if Libra is going to lead somebody someplace, Libra is going to say, well, we need to gather up at least 5 managers to manage the different departments of this widget factory, and we need to make sure that they all have degrees in business, and we're gonna contract a personnel agency to find these people for us, and then we're going to interview each one for their department, and in that interview is going to be myself and the vice president and the secretary and the head of the board of directors. Okay, that's Libra stuff. All intellectual, all words and a plan, okay? The last cardinal sign is Capricorn. Okay, so Capricorn is going to organize everything. They're going to get everything in its place. They're going to know all about each little individual thing that they have in place that's going to be necessary for you to complete a project, okay? Then they're going to take that stuff and they're going to be the leader, okay? They are going to initiate through leadership, through the model of leadership, through the role of leadership and organization. They are going to lead people to do things. Okay, so that's an example of the value of knowing about these signs. If your boss is a Capricorn, completely different than a Libra, completely different than a Cancer, completely different than a Taurus or an Aries, right? So if you know these things, you're way ahead of the game, right? That's just the way it is. So, what else can we say about this? So I think that we can call it quits there. This will be entitled Sun Signs Part 2. There may be a Sun Signs Part 3. I have to figure it out, all right? But we are going to move on to another template, right? So now we know, what do we know so far? This really was not a template, so to speak. This was just, this is all about learning the signs, acquiring a fundamental understanding and knowledge of the basics of all the signs and their names and symbols. That's important. Their names and symbols, and really what you want to do is you want to learn their progression, which one follows which all around the zodiac, right? So here you have spring, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, summer, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, fall, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, winter is Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. And these signs do take on characteristics of the seasons, as well as characteristics of the stage in life that our cosmic man is going through, okay? So you get to Libra. Libra is going to be a full-grown man very sagacious, very knowledgeable, very wise, and able to judge. Okay, much different than, say, Leo, who's the father, the late teenager, right? Or Virgo, who's a newly made, I guess you could say, adult, right? A virgin, right? Okay. Or much different than Capricorn, who's like incredibly wise and knows what life is about, and puts one foot in front of the other, and knows the importance of being efficient and economical and organized and being the leadership role. So each, all of these have, Pisces, okay, Sagittarius is where man starts to retire. So Sagittarius is known as the retiree of the zodiac. And if you've ever known a Sagittarius, they're, even though they're the visionary of the zodiac, they can be extremely retiring. Like when they go home after work, I mean, they retire, all right? It's just part of their personality, right? So retiree of the zodiac, 55, 60 years old, then we go into Capricorn, the goat, right? You've heard the term old goat. Well, that's directly from Capricorn. And Aquarius, the water bearer. Now, Aquarius, I do not have a general bead on in terms of where they are in the progression of a man's life that we're tracing here. But I can speculate. I mean, if he's the water bearer, right, then he's concerned with the entire community, all right? He's mature enough and can make decisions, right, and that will benefit the whole entire community and keep it thriving, procreating, and so on and so forth. So that takes a certain amount of circumspection and sagaciousness, knowledge, maturity, insight, wisdom, okay? So you can envision somebody in their 70s who's been there, done it all, right, and knows the mistakes that people are going to make and has the knowledge to avert that, or mistakes that communities will make, right? So Pisces then is the man on the threshold of passing on, all right? So Pisces is associated with what do they call it? Well, they call it passing on, right? Moving on to the next world, moving back into spirituality, into spiritual existence, leaving the corporal body, all right? Moving on into the spiritual world. So, you got the seasons, you got the progression of a man's life, you have the different metaphorical titles for each of the signs. You have the 5 animals, the 4 people, the 3 water creatures. So, that should give you something to chew on, so to speak. And we're going to come back. Hopefully it's not going to be this long. I mean, I apologize. I've taken way too long. It's just, I'm insanely busy. I mean, especially now. So, this is going out on Raw Vegan Cowboy on YouTube. Be a reference to it on my Instagram channel and my Facebook channel. And I want to thank you all for hanging out and taking an interest. I think this is going to be tremendously rewarding. And once again, if this is the first episode you've seen, please go back and watch episode number 1 and 2. This is episode 3. Next episode 4. It's a sequence, and each episode we're going to get more and more knowledgeable, be able to identify the telltale characteristics of everybody in your life. And I can't emphasize enough how important this is, how much easier this will make your life become if you have this knowledge about other people. And especially about your children. Okay, this is the biggest failure of humanity, is not to understand their children. And on that note, I am going to finish. Once again, it's Trace Perot, fourth in my series of cosmic programming. And I will be back at you with series number 4, with episode number 4, as soon as I can possibly do that. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, and hope you got something out of that. But stick with it, because it's gonna really help you in your life. Adios.